I hope you're hungry. 今天我们不是介绍一个普通的食品品牌，而是一个非常会使用文字与视觉去呈现优质品牌精神的一个食品品牌。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast. I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. In June, we've talked a lot about the language of luxury and looked at fashion brands or premium technology. Today, we want to talk about a really good example of how someone can take a consumer brand and make it sound luxury. As a fair warning, we expect at the end of this episode, you may be heading to buy food rather than going to work. And that's because we're going to talk about cheese. And not just any cheese, artisan cheese. If you have the chance, crack open some good cheese and a bottle of wine, and let's dive into how do you make cheese sound luxurious.
Now, to make this episode possible, I have to thank Andrew for actually mentioning this brand. But actually, your friend has no idea that we're doing this. So, so it's actually your friend is working in this cheese company, right?
Yeah. 跟大家讲一点，这是我大学非常要好的朋友。然后我们其实失联还蛮多年的，他是美国人。然后因为我大学在那个 Wisconsin University of Wisconsin-Madison 嘛，就是 Wisconsin 的州立大学。然后 Wisconsin 在美国就是出了名的，就是 cheese 的产地。然后我朋友呢帮一堆，他曾经帮很多不同的大公司工作，结果后来跑到一间 Wisconsin 的做 cheese 的公司。这间 cheese 的公司，我原本还小看他了，想说，那你们公司多少人？他说，1000个。我想
cheese
很大，对，很大的公司哎。然后他的公司名称叫做 Sartori S-A-R-T-O-R-I。听这个 episode 的时候，你们也可以去找 Sartori Cheese， 然后看他们的网站 and follow along。他最近有一个跟台湾比较有关，他跑来台湾，然后我们就 we had a chance finally after I think last time I saw him was at his wedding roughly 10 years ago, and we finally could grab a beer, and he told me he also brought me samples of the cheese because he's selling them into Costco. And it's supposedly doing really well in Costco as well. In Costco, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan, I think.
Right.
So if you go to Costco now, free advertisement for my friend, since he has no idea I'm doing this episode. Yeah, if you go to Costco, you can find Sartori cheese. But just the fact that they're going into Costco also tells you it's a consumer brand, right? Which makes the fact that they use language of luxury so well on their website especially makes that an interesting case study.
Absolutely. 因为最近我们都在讨论如何要让你的听起来、说起来、写起来听起来好像很 expensive， 那我们都会参考了很多 premium luxury brand 这些奢侈品牌。但是呢 cheese 尤其是在 Costco 你就可以买得到 cheese， 它是一个你每一个人都可以买得到的。但是呢我们看了它的 website 之后，我们就发现 wow，They did such a good job making it so premium and just beautiful. So we're going to dive into the website today. 所以大家可以的话，不再开车的话，你可以打开它的 website. Let's dive in together.
From the very start, the moment you open the page, the copywriting, the language, and the wording choice stands out because you would think cheese, right? What words usually come to mind? Like, oh, delicious or healthy or natural. This would be the normal angle people take. But because this cheese is supposed to evoke a feeling of like master craftsman, They actually start by their very first line is artisan cheese for all. And from that very beginning, you get that balance from it's fancy, but it's for everybody. But it still sounds quite luxurious. Artisan cheese for all. And then as soon as you go to the second paragraph, handcrafted since 1939. So now you're bringing in that other thing we've talked about with luxury copywriting, the heritage feel, right? Handcrafted, 1939. You feel, oh, there's history, master works put into this kind of cheese.
Yeah, and I actually plan on inviting my friend, try to invite him onto our podcast to talk about this, because I believe he was basically the first one to go into that company and say, hey, I think our product really has global potential. Whereas the company was really focused on, I mean, since 1939, they were focused on making cheese and selling within the United States as a premium brand within the US. But my friend took it international. So I wonder if they changed the language. Probably not, but they probably made it just like artisan cheese. When you see artisan, 为什么这个东西 luxurious？ 就是因为 artisan 是通常你想象是几个人，很少数的人用手在做的，所以 by definition 少数的几个人用手在做就不能很大众化嘛，对不对？但是他就把它变成 artisan cheese for all，等于是把它 democratize。然后他一直提到 generational， 在那个 handcrafted since 1939 底下，他有说 at Sartori our family has cultivated artisanal cheese from Wisconsin farms for over 4 generations。 他们不断的提到这个 4 generation， 就是我们已经做很久很久了。那我们也知道，从 old European heritage luxury brands， 当你做一件事情做很久很久很久很久，就会感觉越来越 luxurious。
Exactly. I mean, I think for luxury brands to be established, they have to talk about, again, like the heritage Nick mentioned, culture, history. 那这边它全部马上都已经包括在这边了，而且它用的字我也蛮喜欢，它用刚刚大家讲的 artisanal 或者是 cultivate， 而这些字都有一点就是听起来就是非常的 premium， 而且是一个有一点点好像稍微遥不可及，但是 again it is cheese for all。
他们还做了另外一件事情，我觉得蛮有趣的，就是它的很多 cheese 的产品，它跟欧洲的酒的名称绑在一起。cheese 本来就是跟酒要混在一起嘛，但是他们好像有把一些酒的味道去混到他们的 cheese 里面。所以像有一款 cheese， 它的名字就叫做 Merlot，I'm using the English pronunciation Merlot Bellavitano， 听起来很欧洲，
对啊，
然后跟酒绑在一起，突然就升级了，对不对
？Yeah, and even actually under their featured products, they have another one they call the Montemore Cheddar. But if you look at the description, back to this heritage and European feeling, fondly named for our family's homestead in Italy, a beautiful place surrounded by mountain land. So they're using this heritage in multiple ways. This is a generational business. This is around since 1939. Oh, our homestead family comes from the old country back in Italy. They're just using this entire historical context to make you feel like this is not just about the cheese. This is about a family heritage.
Right.
And that's the exact same language that you will see in the history of Hermes, the history of Louis Vuitton. They will always talk about this. Chanel would be the same.
Right. 其实这个提醒我一个，因为有很多听众，尤其是台湾的，可能会觉得说啊，可是人家你看，人家就是有这么古老的历史啊，他们从1939年就已经开始做了。可是我们公司或者我自己，我没有这种历史啊。但其实台湾有很多公司，他们是有背后的故事的，但他们不知道怎么用。最好的 example 就是 Nick 做的，很早以前做的案子。台湾公司以前是做 race car。They were doing race car drive for it, and then they switched to dental. But they never talked about, before you got there, they never talked about their story.
You have this ability to show either your capability or the history of things in a way that can speak to your expertise or speak to your generational history. And a lot of Taiwanese companies forget that. They think that if we put like one page that says like established in this year, here's how much money we established with. That's not a story, right? What they're doing here is this is a cheese company, but they're telling a story that makes you feel like, oh, this is a heritage mastercraft brand. Yeah. And then they pull that throughout. Like through the whole landing page, we've gotten artisan cheese, artisanal, 4 generations, talking about the history of the family. And that just makes you want to know more about this brand. Not just the cheese, the product itself, but it's like, where does this come from? And I think they do a great job of leading into their about page. They use just 3 words: artistry, imagination, and patience. So you get that artistry again, but then imagination and patience, you're like, what does this have to do with cheese? So this is where you start to get into like, okay, how does this get made? What is the story of this company? They do a really good job of drawing you in.
我尤其很喜欢那个字 patience，
Yeah.
因为大部分的不会想到要用这个字，但是当你在讲 heritage 的时候，尤其 4 generations， 他们 patience 就代表这些都是我们慢慢一点一点耕耘出来的。I have never actually, I don't know about Sherry, I'm really interested in what you think, because I've never thought of patience as a word of luxury.
Well, actually, I mean, if you think about the word haute couture, that is patience, right? Because you're taking the time and making one dress for someone very specific. So I think for luxury, patience and handcraft, that both aligns to what luxury, like the idea of luxury and the goal behind luxury.
And this kind of brings me into another page of theirs that I really appreciate, where they talk about the craftsmanship of the cheese. This is under their About Us, but they break About Us into like the history of our company, into how we make things. And they do something that I really like, which is they take that 3 bullet points that we talked about before, and they repeat it and switch stuff out.
Right.
But you see these 3 words or a combination of these 3 words show up in multiple places. So at the top of their like master cheesemaking page, they use passion, artistry, and ingenuity. So they switched out a few of those, but you're still getting like that artistry. But within this, back to what Sherry was talking about with the idea of patience. And what does that mean for the creation? They have this great paragraph where they say, all of our master cheesemakers spent over a decade making cheese in Wisconsin, studying their craft and extensively honing their skill in the rigorous Wisconsin Master Cheesemaker program to earn their prestigious title. So back to this idea of patience. This is not something that someone can come into a factory and learn in a day or learn in a week, right? Back to this is a consumer product. You would assume there's a SOP. You just go in, you follow the process, boom, cheese. But this is a craft. You have to have patience. You have to sit down and learn the process. You have to hone your skills, as they say. This is a long period. You cannot learn this craft. And this is what I think makes the difference, especially when you look at handcrafted leather goods. You would assume this takes someone forever. Or we think about like expensive Japanese handcrafted silverware, pottery, anything that is just handmade. They're taking that same idea and applying it to cheese. Patience is something that applies to this. You cannot learn it overnight.
而且我也非常喜欢这里面的几个字。我觉得其实有很多台湾的公司，因为台湾有很多公司真的是深耕他们的技术或者他们的产品，然后他们对 customer 的 dedication 深耕很久。所以 studying my craft, studying our craft, being dedicated, devoted to our craft. That's a sentence that a lot of companies can use, but maybe sometimes they don't know how to use it.
I would say that like in Taiwan, and maybe that's just because there's a lot of tech industry, efficiency. Everyone's like, we are the most efficient. We're the most cost effective. These are the type of words you use over and over again. But you're losing that's like, maybe efficiency isn't always a good thing. Maybe efficiency or inefficiency brings something different to your company.
而且 Nick 你有没有注意到台湾公司最喜欢的一个字 quality， 我们已经看了五个页面咯，一次都没有出现。I wonder why that is. What do you think? Why is it that they don't, this brand that wants to have more premium luxury feel has never used the word quality?
For me, I think it's because quality is assumed or quality is inherent. When you're talking about master craftsmen who have to spend decades to learn their skill and a heritage brand, you just assume it's quality. You don't have to be told it's quality. You're in your mind, you're like, well, no one spends 10 years making a crappy product.
And I think it makes sense because if I just say, hey, I make quality products and I give you absolutely no example, then everyone will question it. But if I just show you what that really means when it comes to quality, then I think this is exactly what they're doing, right?
Actually, if you told me that you make quality products, I'll assume that you make a consumer product that's very affordable. But if you tell me you make artisanal product,
You're like,
artisanal work, I'll be like, okay, I'm paying this. I'm paying a lot for this.
Yeah, this is going to be expensive.
Right.
But again, it's back to like now quality is inherently inside.
Yeah.
You don't have to call it out. Again, you can look through this website, and I did find a few places in the back where they talk about like where they get their ingredients.
Okay.
And then they talk about quality. But it takes a while to get there. They're not like Taiwanese companies like quality, efficiency, friendly service, right? They're just like trying to blatantly put that in your face. Whereas when you read through this website, you kind of assume all those things are true. And you assume all those things are true because it gives you a sense of this is a premium brand, or this is going to be expensive, or this is a heritage brand. I should expect certain things to be tied to that name. Right? That's where that almost like poetic sense comes in there. It's like, I don't have to tell you exactly what's there, but you get that feeling, so you make that assumption.
And I want to bring up something really, really quickly. 如果大家有到我们 Insights， 也就是 EP Insights episode 的话，昨天的 episode 我跟 Carol 录了是 How do you look expensive？ 但我们特别讲到的就是 PowerPoint design。那其实啊，我发现在这个的 website， 它有很多的 example is very consistent with what we talked about. And I'll just bring up like a couple of the points. 那其中一个在我们昨天的 episode 里面，我们提到的就是你要看起来很昂贵的条件，就是第一个，你一定要考虑到观众的一个视线的路线。你会发现在这个 website， 你每 scroll， 你每滑一下，你就会知道它的重点是什么，不会觉得很乱的感觉，你不会觉得视线是从右到左，左到右这样子，而且你是非常清楚的就会发现一个重点。还有另外一个的，我觉得就是 consistency。那刚刚 Nick 有提到，就是他们会使用3个字 and then with like the period, right？ 那他会用这个 consistency throughout their website。 他们每要说一个重点的时候，他们就会用3个不同的单字作为他一个篇幅的一个代表，所以我觉得这个也真的是蛮厉害。那还有一点就是 spacing， 他用了非常多的 space， 然后它是大篇幅的这样子的图片，还有加上很多的空间，很少的字，那就是可以呈现出来这种很高级的感觉。
Well, we hope that you are hungry and enjoyed this dive into how do you take a consumer product but take some of the things we can learn from the language of luxury and really build out something that sounds premium, but it doesn't have to become like a luxury company in order to talk that way and look that way. Definitely go check out Satori's website so that you can get more inspiration. There's a ton more things we didn't talk about, but just touching on those key things when it comes to the language, when it comes to the design, and it comes to the feeling of this website, there's a lot to learn from how to take the language of luxury and turn it into the language of consumer brands. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.